It's been nearly 4 months since the release of my first Link's Loves video, and I still can't believe how much attention that video has received. Lately I've been getting a crap ton of comments asking when I'm going to make the next part of the series, so ladies and gents, or whatever you want to call yourself, the next Link's Love is finally here. Initially that video was going to be the first part of a 2-part series, but in order to allow myself to go into more detail about each potential match for each Link, I've decided to split up Link's Loves into several videos, each dedicated to a particular iteration of Link. After making this decision, I posted a community poll to allow you, the viewers, to decide which Link we will analyze in this video. Unsurprisingly, Breath of the Wild won the vote by a large margin, so that will be the focus of this video. And with the recent release of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, I've decided to include that game in this video as well. However, I will be separating the content to avoid spoilers for those who have not yet played or completed Age of Calamity yet, and will give separate conclusions for the two games. Due to this, please keep in mind that I may omit some analysis from the Breath of the Wild section because I plan to discuss it more in the Age of Calamity portion of this video. With all that out of the way, let's get started. I'm your host Andy, and welcome to Zeldom. It's been 3, almost 4 years since the release of Breath of the Wild on the Wii U, and I'd have to say that it's the most popular Zelda game when it comes to shipping. In fact, I'm pretty sure there's ships out there on the internet for Link with probably half of the characters in the game. Due to this, I'm going to only focus on the ones that actually have ground to support them, plus the most popular fan ships regardless of canonical support. Let's start our analysis with the latter. The first candidate, or I should say candidates, that we are going to talk about are the Great Fairies. Most of you are probably already giving me a weird face, but I did have a couple of subscribers suggest the Great Fairies in a community post for this video, so here it is. The Great Fairies are not one of the most popular internet ships because of a romantic connection, but rather for the memes. All 4 of the Great Fairies perform the same actions in the same circumstances, so I'm going to refer them as if they were one unit. The fairies are always slightly flirty when speaking to Link. It's not known whether or not they act like this to all travelers, so let's not take this as evidence that they might have an actual attraction to Link. However, the real reason why they are a meme ship is because what they do to Link whenever he comes to them to get his armor upgraded. Depending on the level of the upgrade, the fairies will flirt or violate Link differently. For a level 1 upgrade, the fairies merely blow him a kiss. In a level 2 upgrade, the fairies will kiss their finger and then prod Link's forehead. Level 3 upgrades is where it gets intense. Here they go all in and kiss him as Link tries to draw back. Finally, a level 4 armor upgrade will result in the fairies snatching Link up like an action figure, pulls him in, and takes him down into the fountain. I don't think we even want to know what happens down there. I think Link's face alone makes it pretty clear that he is not okay with this violation of his personal space, and that he has no mutual infatuation with these fairies, so on to the next character, Sidon. This character instantly gained a lot of popularity among fans, but I was rather surprised to find that many took their love for Sidon's character to shipping him with Link. I'm not here to tell anyone what their headcanon should and should not be, but as a Zelda theorist, I consider it my job to provide a thorough analysis. Sure, I'm a person with my own bias, but I do my best to support my conclusions with evidence from the games, and if I come across contradictory information, I'll modify these conclusions. Anyways, let's talk about Sidon. Link, or at least the player, is first introduced to Sidon during the journey to Sora's domain. Along the journey to the domain, and even until the completion of Vah Ruta, Sidon is always saying highly supportive things to Link. This is what I think is a large reason many fans love Sidon's character. However, I don't think this in any way suggests a romantic relationship with Link. Prince Sidon is known to be a highly positive and charming dude according to various Zora women in the domain. He even has a small fan club of female Zoras who are constantly talking about him. Here I think it's safe to say that Sidon's positive and encouraging remarks to Link are not said out of attraction. He's just an awesome and positive guy. I think there's also another factor that should be enough to put this to rest, though you are free to disagree. Hey, that rhymed. After completing Vah Ruta and the Champion's Ballad, Link can talk to Sidon, who will of course thank him for his help and tell him how amazing he is. Then Link can ask about Mipha, and Sidon will tell Link of his memories as a child where he remembered a Hylian swordsman who spent so much time with his sister, which made Sidon feel as if his sister was being stolen from him. He then reveals that the swordsman was Link, and says he hopes he hasn't offended him. Then Sidon proceeds to tell Link that, had things turned out differently, He might have been my sister's husband, my brother-in-law. I too like Sidon's character, but I guess not to the extent of shipping him with Link. After all, Sidon seems like a cool guy, and even if he did roll that way, I highly doubt that he would go after his sister's man, especially after acknowledging had Mipha survived, they would have been brother-in-laws. That's just my interpretation, and I can't tell anyone how to write their headcanon, but I think Sidon and Link can better be described as a bromance and would be good friends. With that said, the next one will be Vilia. This is the suspicious cross-dressing dude from the Karakara Bazaar. In my opinion, this one has more support than Sid Link, but not by much. Vilia is a man who dresses in Gerudo Vi clothing and acts like a woman to be able to enter Gerudo Town. It's not made perfectly clear if he does this just to be around a bunch of women, and if so, that's pretty creepy. The only alternative motive I can think of is he actually thinks himself as a woman, which would actually make some sense based off his interactions with Link. When Link meets up with him to obtain Gerudo clothing so he may sneak into Gerudo Town, Vilia says some pretty sus things, such as, "Oh my, what a lovely young lad you are." When Link tells him that he heard about a man who snuck into Gerudo Town by wearing women's clothing, Vilia pretends to know nothing, and when Link inspects the details of Vilia's face not covered by the veil, Vilia tells him, "Hee hee, you're making my cheeks warm looking at me like that." If Link chooses to acknowledge Vilia as a man, he will be brushed off. The only way to get the Gerudo clothes to go stealth mode is to tell Vilia he, or I guess she, is beautiful, and is then offered to buy the set. After Link equips the Gerudo clothing, Vilia says, "You look adorable," with double exclamation marks. Ah, hee hee hee, just as I thought. You make for a quite good looking gal. When he's told this, Link shows rather embarrassed or bashful body language. Finally, after Link is about to leave, Vilia tells him, "If you're free to grab something to eat sometime, keep me in mind." Suddenly, a gust of wind blows his veil off his face, and Link gives a very surprised reaction. Because Link was already highly suspicious that Vilia was actually a man, I doubt he would give such a surprised reaction after seeing Vilia's full face, if they were actually a dude. This leads me to think that there's actually a slight possibility Vilia is actually a woman. After all, Vilia does have the iconic red hair of the Gerudo. Then again, Vilia has red eyes, while all of the Gerudo in Breath of the Wild, as far as I'm aware, have green eyes. These red eyes seem to match those of Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time, so there's also a slight possibility that Vilia is actually one of the rare Gerudo males. Then again, those are both very narrow possibilities, and I don't have anything else to support those theories at this time. Anyways, odds are Vilia is a man because after their face is revealed, they warn Link to be cautious of the wind, to which Link facepalms. Given that we're supposed to believe Vilia is a man posing as a woman, I don't think there's a probable ship here. Despite Vilia's supposed flirtiness and Link's bashful or embarrassed reaction when wearing the Gerudo clothes, there's just not enough support for these two. Besides, this person is acting rather weird regardless of their gender. If I were in Link's shoes having to buy women's clothing from this guy and then wear it as he were saying these things, I'd be pretty embarrassed and uncomfortable too. While we are in the Gerudo region, I think it would be appropriate to discuss Riju next, the current chief of the Gerudo tribe. She's rather young to be chief, but due to the unexpected death of her mother, she had to step in to fulfill the role despite her age. We can even see extra cushions on her throne, which funnily seem to serve the purpose of a booster seat. It's not exactly clear how old Riju is, but based on her appearance, I'll assume she's somewhere in her mid-teens. She looks like she could be around the same age as Zelda pre-Calamity, so let's just assume she's 16 years old. Link and Riju don't have as many interactions as some of the upcoming characters, but I think she's still worth discussing. When Link sneaks into Gerudo Town and presents himself to Riju, she quickly realizes who he is and pardons him. She's rather dismissive of Link breaking the most iconic law of the civilization, but then again she also makes him stay in disguise to not disturb the public. Later, when she's alone with Link, she openly shares some of her self-doubts and worries with Link, which seem to be very similar to Zelda's before the Calamity. Why she's expressing her self-doubt to a stranger like Link, I don't know, but it's possible it's because she has the hots for him like 80% of the other characters in the game. After Link retrieves the Thunder Helm from Riju, she starts acting in a way that could be interpreted as subtly flirty. She puts on the Thunder Helm while alone with Link and asks him, "What's wrong? You're just staring." Anyway, what matters now is, how does it look? The dots here convey hesitation or stuttering, which gives me the impression Riju is basically asking Link the cliché female trap question, how do I look? Link has the option of replying with, "It looks good, and it's a tad big." If the latter is chosen, Riju will sarcastically respond with, "You don't say." Another thing that makes me suspicious that Riju might have a thing for Link is her complete willingness to lend Link the Thunder Helm, the precious heirloom with the Gerudo for untold generations. Sure, she could have lent it to him as a symbol of thanks for helping her people and trusting he would return it, but I think there's a little more to her motives. She could very likely have the hots for Link like so many of the other characters seem to. What is particularly odd about Link's and Riju's relationship is that Link can elaborately sneak into Riju's personal quarters at night and find her playing with a Sandsteel stuffed animal. If Link speaks with her, she will get embarrassed and obviously lie about playing with the stuffed Sandsteel, telling Link to just ignore them. Riju then says, "Town hero or no, you shouldn't just come wandering into someone's room at this time of night." This feistiness is likely a product of her embarrassment to Link catching her playing with stuffed animals, though she does have a good point. Going into a girl's bedroom in the middle of the night is a bit sus, Link. But then again, she does have personal conversations with Adam about her mother if he lingers longer, so I don't really know. To me, I think Link is violating her personal space, but she doesn't seem to mind his company. After all, her nightly routine is playing followed by mourning the loss of her mother, so she could probably use some company. Although I think shipping Link and Riju has some perfectly valid reasoning, I think the more developed upcoming characters have a better chance. If you're enjoying this video so far, please go ahead and take a moment to subscribe to the channel. This channel focuses on Zelda theories and analyzing other aspects of the games, such as Link's loves. Anyways, enough of me, let's continue. Another one of the highly popular ships with Link is Paya. I'm sure anyone who has played Breath of the Wild is aware of Paya's hardcore crush on Link. When the player first meets her, she's immediately flustered and at one point thinks out loud and says how close he is to her even though they're standing apart. She's very excited but flustered when Link asks about her and often hides her face in her hands. Paya has got to be one of the most bashful characters I've ever seen. If Link talks to her without a shirt on, she'll stutter out, "Master Link, that immodest outfit is quite unbecoming of a hero like you. But please cover yourself up this instant." I'm pretty sure she's only saying this because she's gonna lose absolute control of herself if she sees him shirtless for too long. I'm not gonna go through and explain every single interaction they have for a couple of reasons. One of them being this is such a well-known crush and relationship in the game that I don't want to beat a dead horse. The second is that most of their interactions are very similar and go like this. Link shows up, Paya gets flustered as heck and makes it obvious how attracted she is to him, and then there's a little bit of discussion. Every single time. There shouldn't be any need for me to prove Paya has a crush on Link, but if you want proof, her entire diary is about Link with the final entry expressing how grateful she is for Link teaching her what it's like to love. The real question comes down to does Link love her back, to which the answer is probably not. Ultimately it comes down to how the player feels for Link, but I believe the developers laid enough groundwork to show Link's separate attention. The following can be found in Paya's diary. I wonder if Master Link is in love with Princess Zelda. If so, I think they suit each other quite splendidly. If they become a couple, I'd give that pairing my full support. Though just the thought of that makes my heart hurt. Here we can see that Paya is a Z-Link shipper herself, though she wishes it could be her. This is one of many subtle hints that Link has, or at least had, affection for Princess Zelda. But like I said, it ultimately comes down to interpretation. So far, I'd have to rate Paya one of the more likely ships, but we still have 2 more to go. Naturally, this leads us to the first of the 2 big love interests for Link, Princess Zelda. It's important to keep in mind that Zelda did not like Link for quite a while during Breath of the Wild's story. Because Z-Link is perhaps the most popular Breath of the Wild ship, I'll cover all of the main points as well as some details I think are important, but I'll go through it all a bit quickly to avoid redundancy, since this topic has been widely discussed and analyzed by countless others over the last few years. It's revealed in various cutscenes that occur shortly after Link is appointed to be Zelda's knight or bodyguard that Link makes her feel like a failure and she is very insecure with him around. When Link was appointed to be Zelda's knight, he was already highly accomplished and possessed the legendary blade, the Master Sword. We don't know if Link and Zelda had interacted much before he was assigned as her bodyguard, but Zelda did write this in her diary. "Tomorrow my father is assigning him, in all caps, as my appointed knight." Based on this, I don't think Link and Zelda already had a relationship, but rather she knew who Link was based on his reputation and ownership of the Master Sword. Without even knowing who Link was as a person, Zelda seems to have assumed Link was a person who obtained his accomplishments due to his destiny, rather than having to work for his skill, making her feel like an utter failure. Her insecurities, which are mildly presented in the cutscenes, are developed further in her diary. I still recall feeling his eyes on me as I walked ahead. The feeling stayed with me so long. I grew anxious and weary. It is the same feeling I had felt before in his company. And still, not a word passes his lips. I never know what he's thinking. It makes my imagination run wild. Guessing at what he is thinking, but will not say. What does the boy chosen by the sword that seals the darkness think of me? Will I ever truly know? Then, I suppose it's simple. A daughter of Hyrule's royal family, yet unable to use her sealing magic? He must despise me. Later on, she implies in her diary that she and Link didn't speak much to each other despite Link having to follow her around everywhere. In most other videos out there, and listening to people discuss Link's and Zelda's relationship, I've heard countless times that Link and Zelda opened up to each other after Link saved her from the blades of the Yiga clan, but there's far more to it than that. Urbosa played wingman and gave Link and Zelda the push they needed to bond. In her diary, Urbosa writes the following. In a similar yet distinct way, Link seems to have trouble expressing himself. Perhaps the two can help each other. That is, if she ever gives him the chance. It's not yet clear whether Urbosa was trying to bring them together as a couple, but my gut tells me she was merely trying to reduce the tension between the two for Zelda's sanity. Furthermore, the night in which memory number 6 takes place, Urbosa writes, I sent a word to Link, who showed up at Naboris faster than I expected. Although it is none of my business, I felt the least I could do to bridge their gap was share some things about Zelda. The rest is up to them. Memory number 6, which shows the dialogue between Urbosa and Link, is titled Urbosa's Hand, further strengthening my argument that Urbosa served as a catalyst to Link's and Zelda's relationship. Memory number 7, Blades of the Yiga, takes place the very next day, and after the attempt on her life and saving Link, Zelda decides she is going to try opening up to Link. Not long after, she follows through on this, and Zelda writes what happened in her diary. Bit by bit, I've gotten Link to open up to me. It turns out he's quite a glutton. He can't resist a delicious meal. When I finally got around to asking why he's so quiet all the time, I could tell it was difficult for him to say. But he did. With so much at stake, and so many eyes on him, he feels it's necessary to stay strong and to silently bear any burden. A feeling I know all too well. For him, it has caused him to stop outwardly expressing his thoughts and feelings. I always believed him to be simply a gifted person who had never faced a day of hardship. How wrong I was. Everyone has struggles that go unseen by the world. I was so absorbed with my own problems, I failed to see his. I wish to talk to him more and to see what lies beneath those calm waters, to hear him speak freely and openly. And perhaps I too will be able to bare my soul to him and share the demons that have plagued me all these years. This entry provides us with a lot of insight into Link's motives, and explains why he is always so silent despite being capable of talking like everyone else. With this push from Urbosa and Zelda's desire to speak to Link after he saved her, they were able to begin to open up to each other and realize they both share the similar insecurities caused by their foretold destinies. Towards the end of Urbosa's diary, she even writes about how Zelda had been smiling a lot more lately, and she assumed she and Link were finally getting along. The final piece of evidence I have to try to prove that Urbosa brought Link and Zelda together lies after Link defeats Thunderblight Ganon and frees Urbosa's spirit. Near the end of her monologue, Urbosa tells Link,
You take good care of the princess. Oh, and also, take good care of Hyrule.
It's important to make note of the wink she gives to Link here at the end. The fact that she says take care of Zelda could simply be referring to his everlasting duty to defend her, but the addition of, and also, take care of Hyrule, makes it sound like she believes he will marry Zelda and become king. Now, I don't need anyone getting technical with me and saying that marrying Zelda doesn't mean he will become king if we're following the highly complex European system, but you get the point. He and Zelda would rebuild Hyrule side by side. Sure, they bonded, but that could merely have developed into a platonic relationship, not romance. We still need to see if there was any actual love between the two. Since Zelda's thoughts and emotions are shown far more than Link's, I think it's easier to start from there. In the not-so-secret ending of the game, we hear Zelda tell Link that together they must start rebuilding Hyrule.
I believe in my heart that if all of us work together, we can restore Hyrule to its former glory. Perhaps even beyond, but it all must start with us.
What I take from this is that Link and Zelda set off to rebuild Hyrule hand in hand, but once again we still need a bit more proof to show this was out of love. Instead of giving a long analysis in my interpretations of Zelda's body language throughout the game to determine if she loved Link, I'm going to give the quick and easy piece of evidence right away. In the Champion's Ballad DLC, Cass the Bard performs the Song of the Hero, written by his mentor, who was the court poet before the Calamity hit. It goes like this. An ancient hero, a Calamity appears, now resurrected after 10,000 years. Her appointed knight pays the price. The princess's love for her fallen knight awakens her power, and within the castle the Calamity is forced to cower. But the knight survives. In the Shrine of Resurrection he sleeps, until from his healing dream he leaps, to become a hero once again, to wrest the princess from evil's den. The hero, the princess, hand in hand, must bring the light back to this land. The two big lines we need to focus on for the goal of this video is the princess's love for her fallen knight awakens her power, and the hero, the princess, hand in hand, must bring the light back to this land. These two lines should make it obvious that Zelda truly did love Link. Cass also explains how his mentor had a crush on Zelda, but as he relayed to Cass, the princess only had eyes for her escort, her own knight attendant. However, one thing to consider is that even though the poet says Link and Zelda must restore the land hand in hand, they were just a poet, not a fortune teller, so they had no idea how Link would feel after he awoke from the Shrine of Resurrection. Though the fact that this was included into the poem does lead me to believe that Link did develop feelings for Zelda prior to the Calamity. We can even see this is likely the case when he and Zelda are fleeing through the woods during the Calamity. Zelda falls to the ground and begins to mourn. Instead of fulfilling his knightly duty and pulling her back onto her feet and rushing her to safety, Link kneels down and comforts her. Though he could be doing this out of a platonic care for Zelda, I think in unison with the other Zealand hints we've discussed makes it more likely for it to be out of love. We've established that Zelda most certainly did fall in love with Link, and that there's a very good chance Link felt the same way before the Calamity, but with Link's loss of memory, we don't know if that changes his feelings after they are reunited after Ganon is defeated. However, the Japanese version of the game gives us totally different information than what's told in the English release. In Breath of the Wild, one of the many uses of the Sheikah Slate is to track the quest log. In the English release, all of the quests and entries are written in the third person. However, in the original context, the Japanese version is written in first person, meaning they are written from Link's point of view. This essentially makes the quest log and Sheikah Slate entries Link's journal. Some of the translated entries offer great insights into Link's feelings for Zelda. Here are a couple of them. After Link reobtains the Master Sword, he writes, "I finally retrieved the legendary Master Sword. I don't know if it's just an illusion, but the sword itself seems to be delighted about this." To this moment, Princess Zelda is still inside Hyrule Castle, fighting to suppress the Calamity. She is still holding onto the faith in me, believing that I will definitely come for her. But with the power that I have now, can she really be saved? Link may not fully remember everything about Zelda yet, but from hearing her speak to him telepathically, he knows she still has faith in him, though he doubts his own abilities. Him asking if the little power he has now, if she's still able to be saved, shows his genuine concern for her and desire to be able to do more. After visiting all of the 13 locations and recalling those memories, Link writes, "I finished visiting all 13 of the locations in the old pictures. I remembered everything I've been through together with Princess Zelda. In these memories, Princess Zelda always strived to complete the task burdened onto her. Even if it's just a moment sooner, I want to save her as quickly as possible. I want to see her smile again with these eyes of my own." First of all, is that sweet or what? The ending cutscene we were talking about earlier seems to fulfill both Zelda's wishes of being able to fully open up to Link without any self-doubt, and Link's desire to see her smile again. As Link begins to follow Zelda to their horses, Zelda stops and expresses how she can no longer hear the voice coming from the Master Sword. She then proceeds to express to Link,
I suppose it would make sense if my power had dwindled over the past 100 years. I'm surprised to admit it, but I can accept that.
I mentioned previously how she wrote in her diary how she hopes to share the demons that have plagued her for so long, referring to her insecurities about her power and how she wishes to have these heartfelt conversations with Link. Here I believe Zelda did just that. Right after she says this, she looks right at Link and gives him a big goofy smile, satisfying his wish to see her smile again. Link then runs up to her and the two walk to their horses side by side. As this is happening, the camera pans way back and shows countless petals of the Silent Princess flowers being carried by the breeze. The game ends with the camera focusing on one close Silent Princess flower, with Link and Zelda way off in the background. This is a dead giveaway of Link's and Zelda's relationship, as the Silent Princess is mentioned in several points throughout the game to symbolize love. I'm not going to spend 5 more minutes proving how important this flower is. I think it's been well established at this point, but for those who don't know much about this topic, go check out some of Nintendo Black Crisis's many Breath of the Wild Z-Link videos, as in just about each one of them he goes in depth to prove this point. With all of this information we have collected, I'm going to conclude that Z-Link is the strongest ship we have for Breath of the Wild so far, and it's perhaps the second most suggested romance between Link and Zelda out of all of the games. Just falling behind Skyward Sword Z-Link, of course. However, we still aren't done with our Breath of the Wild ships yet. We still have one more to talk about. The Flower Lady. Okay, fine. Of course, no video covering Breath of the Wild's love stories would be complete if we didn't talk about Mipha. This relationship seems to call back to Ruto's crush on Link from Ocarina of Time, but Breath of the Wild fleshes it out far more and makes Mipha another leading candidate for Link's affection. Link first met Mipha when he was only about 4 years old. Since Zora aged far slower than Hylians, Mipha was already the equivalent of a teenager or young adult in Zora years, but as Link ages, their relationship develops. Child Link made quite the first impression on Mipha, as she writes in her diary. Link's father was a Hylian knight and likely brought Link with him to Zora's domain when instructed to travel by the king. Mipha describes the child Link as full of energy, always with a ready smile. She was impressed by his swordsmanship abilities as well, being told of how he can already best fully grown men in training. Seeing him all bruised up, she offers to heal Link's bruises and describes Link's face, as he looked up with her with big eyes, as adorable. I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that Mipha hadn't fallen in love with Link yet. At least I hope so, since he's only 4, but as he grows into adulthood, it certainly becomes the case. Link appears to have spent a noteworthy amount of time in Zora's domain while growing. It's worth noting that the next entry in Mipha's diary does say, "It feels like forever since he was here last. He no longer resembles the child I first met." This has led some to believe that Link hadn't visited the Zora's domain between that first visit and after he had become a knight with the Master Sword. However, we can learn through talking with various adult Zora who were alive 100 years prior to the setting of the game that this isn't the case. There's one Zora known as Baz who claims Link had taught him swordsmanship skills and gives Link credit for enabling his career as captain of the Zora Guard. Although Link was already talented in combat at a very young age, I highly doubt he was able to train others as a 4-year-old. To further prove this point, there's also another female Zora named Koda, who apparently grew up with Link and Mipha and gave Link the nickname Linny. Talking to her reveals that prior to the Calamity, she asked Link to choose between her and Mipha, and apologizes for her behavior back then. This shows that while growing up, Link must have spent a noteworthy amount of time at the domain to build the relationships with the other characters. Also, this little detail from Koda also highlights that Link and Mipha had an obvious bond, and must have spent quite a bit of time together during the times he was at the domain. The fact that Koda tried to make Link choose between her and Mipha, and that she is apologetic about these actions, hints that Link and Mipha had become so close that Koda felt like Mipha was stealing her crush. I have no doubt in my mind that Link genuinely cared for Mipha, and that she was probably his best friend throughout his life leading up to the Calamity. Most of us already know how much Mipha cared for Link, but it's important to discuss the proof that she loved Link romantically so we can tie that into Link's emotions later. The tradition of the Zora princesses is to craft special armor for the one they intend to marry, making it the equivalent of an engagement ring. While playing through the Vah Ruta quest in the game, it's revealed Mipha had crafted Zora armor for Link prior to the Calamity, and her diary tells of how much time she invested into it. In memory number 10, titled Mipha's Touch, which occurs not long before Mipha finishes crafting the Zora armor, she starts hinting at her proposal by telling Link,
"Once this whole thing is over, maybe things can go back to how they used to be when we were young. You know, perhaps we could spend some time together."
Mipha planned to present the armor to him when they had some alone time after Zelda's training at Mount Lanayru, but unfortunately, that's when the Calamity hit, and she was never able to propose to Link. 100 years later, when Link returns and frees Mipha's spirit from Vah Ruta, she thanks Link and says that a new freedom will allow her to be with Link once again, and that her only wish while being trapped as a spirit in Vah Ruta for 100 years is just to see him one more time. Since she is a spirit, it seems odd that she claims she can be with Link once again, but this is given more meaning when she gives him Mipha's grace. Mipha tells Link that her spirit can rest in peace knowing that he can call on her power to heal him when he is wounded. This, in unison with multiple other entries in her diary mentioning how she can help Link, makes it perfectly clear that Mipha had fallen in love with Link so much that she made it her purpose to always be there to protect him, even after death. Although Mipha obviously loves Link, we still need to determine if Link's affection for Mipha is either platonic or mutually romantic. I've already talked about why I think Link feels very close to Mipha, but I want to decide if he loved her as much as she loved him. In the Champions Ballad DLC, there's a scene that occurs after the Champions inauguration ceremony where Mipha asks a favor from Zelda.
Princess? May I ask a special favor of you?
Then everyone, including Mipha, looks over at Link. Everyone's attention shifting to Link during this strongly suggests that the favor Mipha was asking Zelda was about Link. Mipha wrote in her diary following the ceremony, "I am grateful to the princess for agreeing to my request, and to Daruk for bringing me closer to Link. Oh, I did hear something that shocked me enough to almost overshadow that happy moment. Link had been chosen to guard the princess wherever she goes. They shall be spending much time together." It's important to keep in mind that Link had just now been assigned to accompany Zelda wherever she goes, so Zelda and Link hardly even know each other at this point, so it leaves me wondering why Mipha seems to be worried about Link spending so much time with Zelda. I have two explanations, the first being that Mipha simply knew that would mean there would be less time for her to be with Link, and at this point she had already begun making her engagement armor for him, so I think she was just concerned about not being able to find a good time to propose to him. Unfortunately, that turned out to be the case. The second reason I have is that Mipha could tell from his last visit that Link had become burdened with the responsibility of his destiny and was silently bottling up his feelings, giving him something in common with Zelda. Previously, I told part of a journal entry from Mipha where she said Link no longer resembles the child she first met, but that's not the full story. Here's all of what she said from that day. Link came to visit the domain. It feels like forever since he was here last. He no longer resembles the child I first met. He is now an accomplished knight and keeper of the sword who seals the darkness. I am so proud. However, he hardly speaks anymore, and he smiles even more rarely. He is still the kind soul I knew, but something has changed. I asked him if something had happened, if something was wrong. He merely shook his head. Perhaps it is his newly acquired height, but I feel he is ever looking past me into the distance beyond. Despite Mipha probably being Link's best friend since childhood, Link tried to conceal his inner struggles from her. I think this narrative is a subtle reference to the ever-growing increase of silent stress among people in the real world. The term silent stress refers to a method of people coping with extreme anxiety by bottling up their emotions, or in other words, trying to cope with it by concealing all signs of emotion. Over the last few decades, this issue has been on the rise, especially in males. The biggest sign of this is the refusal to share one's problems and emotions with others, even those closest to them, deteriorating their relationships. I can attest to this not just from my research sources, but also from my personal experience. However, to avoid getting too deep and personal, we'll shift back to Link as our example. As I've been discussing this, I hope you can immediately see how Link suffers from this. The pressure of being the one destined to defeat the world's greatest evil surely would cause mass amounts of stress. And it's not like Link, being the responsible knight he is, can physically turn to unhealthy methods of stress relief. So what does he do? He bottles up all of his emotions, becoming the stoic knight we can see in all of the Breath of the Wild cutscenes. To Mipha, this was a big change. She described his former personality as energetic and gave cute smiles, so when he became stoic, Mipha immediately knew something was wrong, but Link didn't let her in. The two had been close for such a long time, and Link's sudden refusal to be open with her surely caused her to worry about him. I think this is not only because she loves him and wants to help protect him from physical harm, but also to provide the moral support that he needed. The last detail I have to bring up before we make our conclusions about this ship is Mipha's final journal entry. I finally completed that special armor for Link. I'm confident it will fit him perfectly. He is coming to the domain soon. I hope to give him my gift when I see him, but should I really go through with it? According to the old legend, long ago, a Zora princess fell in love with the Hylian swordsman. Perhaps there is hope. This will be a rare occasion that Link is not accompanying the princess. We should have some time to ourselves. Oh, I have an idea. At sunset, I shall ride upon Vah Ruta with Link. Zora, princess of the past, please lend me your courage. This legend that Mipha is referring to is from Ocarina of Time when Princess Ruto got engaged to the Hero of Time. Kinda. In the previous Link's Loves episode, I concluded that Ruto's relationship with Link in that game could be summarized as, I love him, but he doesn't love me back. Mipha's and Link's relationship is far more complex than the Ocarina of Time counterpart, but I'd have to say the same results still apply. It's truly a tragic story. I genuinely believe that if Mipha had been a little bit more assertive, and had tried directly telling Link she was worried about him, and kept asking for what was troubling him, Link may have just done so. If he did, I think there's a very good chance Link and Mipha would have ended up together, but alas, Mipha was just too passive to help stop Link's unhealthy method of coping with his stress. It took being around Zelda 24/7 and a little push from Urbosa for Link to finally open up to someone after Zelda gave him the chance. Plus, there's no possible way Link could have ended up with Mipha post-Calamity since she kinda died. So although Mipha is one of my favorite characters in the entire Zelda franchise, and I would love Link to be a canon ship, there's just too much evidence pointing towards Zelda, making Z-Link the most likely ship for Breath of the Wild. If I had to pick a runner-up other than Mipha, because once again she's dead, I'd have to give it to Riju. I think in terms of actual evidence, Riju is about even with Paya, so I'm using my bias as the tiebreaker. Paya obviously has a huge crush on Link, but since there aren't many cutscenes, dialogue, or journal entries that could suggest Link has similar interest in her, I'm just going to leave that be. Riju is quite a bit different. As I said during her section, Riju isn't shown to have an obvious interest in Link, but some of her sarcastic remarks and embarrassment when he finds her playing with the stuffed sandseal can be interpreted as a mild crush on Link, which has plenty of time to develop. However, what I think levels a ship with Riju to that of Paya is Link's dialogue options when talking to her. His are actually a little bit funny, whereas the few dialogue options he has when talking with Paya are very matter-of-fact. So there it is. The winner of Link's Loves for Breath of the Wild is Z-Link, with Riju as a runner-up. However, I genuinely believe that had some things gone differently in Breath of the Wild before the Calamity, Link probably would have ended up with Mipha. Conveniently enough, just last month we were gifted with the release of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, which ended up as an alternative timeline to the events of Breath of the Wild. This will mark the beginning of the section covering Age of Calamity if you haven't figured that out. So if you haven't played it yet, here's your spoiler warning, as I will not be holding back on anything I noticed in the game. It's important for me to bring up that both Sidon and Riju were in Age of Calamity, however there isn't much content from them in terms of romance with Link. Sidon spent nearly all of his time in the game with Mipha, and Riju with Urbosa, which makes perfect sense. Sidon's focus is spending as much time with his sister as possible and preventing her death in the alternative timeline, while Riju spends all of her time bonding and learning from Urbosa. I'd say that the Sidon and Riju ships are actually weakened here in Age of Calamity due to their complete lack of direct interaction with Link. But then again, if I time traveled for the purpose of saving my once deceased family, I'd probably spend as much time with them as well, instead of hitting up my crush. There's also the internet shipping Link with Impa Purah, but I think that these are more groundless than Sid Link and even the Great Fairies. Link and Impa don't ever interact with each other except in the very first level when they first meet. Besides, they are only around each other through Zelda, and they are never shown giving each other looks or having a conversation unless it's through Zelda. Ultimately, I think shipping Impa with Link is a very poor replacement for Paya. At least with Paya, she obviously had a crush on him, and they had some actual interaction. Then there's Purah, who isn't around Link much at all, except for the couple times where she's showing off her tech to Zelda and her sister Impa. Overall, there's not really any content in the game to suggest there would be a romance between Link and these two, so it's basically just fanfiction. What Age of Calamity did give us in terms of romance is a further developed love triangle between Link, Zelda, and Mipha. It's worth noting that there are many instances where this is shown and can be interpreted as symbolism for their love triangle, but I'm not really going to go into it because you can essentially slap a triangle onto any snapshot where all three are shown on screen, but that doesn't really give it any meaning. I only mention this because I saw another video where the love triangle is analyzed based on the initial artwork, but I don't think this really means anything. However, there's plenty of other content I'd like to delve into. First things first is that Age of Calamity occurs in an alternative timeline than Breath of the Wild thanks to the time-traveling Taroko. Due to this, we can only use some of the information from Breath of the Wild in our analysis, since many of the events in Age of Calamity change the relationships of some of the characters. The most notable is Link's seemingly different personality in Age of Calamity. As we discussed earlier from Zelda's diary, Link became very stoic due to the heavy burden of wielding the Master Sword, and Mipha points out that Link rarely smiled anymore. During the point in which Taroko travels back to, Link had not yet obtained the Master Sword, and thus had not yet had the supposed change in personality, which explains why we see Link give more detailed facial expressions and smiles in the game. Because Link finds Taroko, Impa takes him with her to meet Zelda, and Link is assigned to accompany Impa and Zelda to the Royal Research Lab, along with a few other knights. Due to his heroic actions in saving Zelda when they were being attacked along the way, Link was appointed to be Zelda's bodyguard far sooner than he was in Breath of the Wild. Without having already been chosen by the legendary Blade of Evil's Bane, Zelda's insecurities weren't exposed by the presence of Link, and the two didn't seem to have any animosity between them. During the cutscene titled Trust, Link defends Zelda and Taroko from Suga's attack. Afterwards, Zelda says this:
Link!
And then Taroko interrupts and starts horseplaying with Link as Zelda, Daruk, and Mipha start laughing. Link then turns back towards Zelda and he looks right at her with his hand rubbing the back of his head, to which Zelda keeps chuckling and smiling. We can see here that Link and Zelda have a much friendlier relationship than they did when they first became acquaintances in Breath of the Wild. One thing I found odd while playing was that Zelda and Link were the only ones who ran ahead to Korok Forest after fighting the Hollows in the Lost Woods. Why did the four champions, Hestu, and accompanying Hylian soldiers all have to stay back? Sure, there were some monsters, but not that many. After the Hollows are defeated in the Lost Woods, Zelda specifically tells Link to come with her to Korok Forest. Since it was only a single text box, there's not any more insight as to why she only requested Link. Odds are that it was not Zelda trying to get some alone time with Link, but then again, I also can't argue much against the thought either. Regardless of Zelda's motives for only bringing Link, they are blocked by Astor, who resummons all of the four Hollows to gang up on Link, who is actually defeated and has his sword broken in half. Astor then orders the Hollows to kill Zelda. Link and Zelda both give a desperation reach for each other, and then a flash of light emits from the Master Sword in its pedestal, temporarily dispersing the Hollows. There's the argument that Link reached out to Zelda because he was supposed to protect her, but couldn't any longer, and Zelda had no protection other than that. However, I disagree with this. This would be an overly simplistic analysis if that's all we concluded. Unlike in Breath of the Wild, Link is far more expressive, and even in Breath of the Wild he still had feelings, he just tried to conceal them. Age of Calamity gives us a different context. Here the two had already had some time to get to know each other without the animosity of Breath of the Wild. Although claiming that Link and Zelda are reaching because they care for each other may be the obvious explanation, I think it's the most reasonable one. Once Link draws the Master Sword, we can see his eyes become fierce as he looks towards Astor, which gives me the impression Link is enraged and is ready to take revenge on Astor for trying to kill them. I think this is one of the many hints suggesting Z-Link in Age of Calamity, but it's not quite strong enough to prove a romance. After Link, Zelda, and the rest of the group are traveling back to Hyrule Castle after the Lost Woods incident, we can see that Zelda's insecurities about her responsibilities are exposed from Link obtaining the Master Sword. But since Zelda had the time to know Link for a while, she doesn't view him the same way she does in Breath of the Wild. This interaction with Urbosa shows her new thoughts.
Link. He's become so much stronger.
And yet I have not. I presume that's what you're thinking?
Zelda nods, confirming she's comparing her progress to Link's. Urbosa helps to comfort Zelda by telling her that she and Link are alike, as they will both rise to any challenge without hesitation. Unfortunately, Urbosa's comforting is only effective for the moment, but Zelda seems to only grow closer with Link as the game progresses. Following the inauguration ceremony, Urbosa is seen having a conversation off to the side with Link. I think this is rather odd since Mipha is his childhood friend, and Daruk seems to have been a bro to Link. If we recall back to Breath of the Wild, the only one-on-one conversation that we know of that Link had with Urbosa was in Memory Number 6, Urbosa's Hand, where she told Link about how insecure he makes Zelda, though none of it is his fault. There's a reasonable assumption that this conversation in Age of Calamity could also be about Zelda. The only problem I can think about to hit this assumption is that since Link and Zelda don't have any tension between them, Urbosa has no need to help bring them together. Unless, of course, she's playing wingman again, like she did in Breath of the Wild. Regardless of what she said, I'm willing to bet it was a rather important conversation, most likely regarding Zelda. Before I present the next important Z-Link scene, we need to take this into context using the song by the court poet from Breath of the Wild. More specifically, the line that says Zelda's love for her appointed knight awoke her power. In that timeline, Zelda's power awoke when Link had fallen to his knees trying to protect her, and when a guardian was about to shoot the killing blow, Zelda stepped forward to protect him and her power unleashed itself. As the song said, it was her love for Link in his mortal peril that unlocked her sacred power. Despite Age of Calamity splitting off into another timeline and changing many of the events, the circumstances in which Zelda unlocks her power remain constant. Astor revives the Blight Ganons and sends all 4 of them to attack. Link tries to fight them off while Impa tries to escort Zelda to safety. Zelda has a flashback to when Link dragged her away from her father and thought he died, and decides she can't let the same thing happen to Link, even if that means giving up her own life. So far, we've been able to tell that Link and Zelda have gotten along pretty well, and would probably be considered friends at this point, but here Zelda is showing deep emotional love for Link. She breaks free from Impa and desperately runs back to Link, reaching for him just like she did in Korok Forest. In her final desperate yell, her sacred power ignites from her hands and temporarily disables the Blights and the Guardians. We do need to keep in mind that the court poet's song is written from the context of Breath of the Wild, but regardless, I think it's safe to say that she still ended up loving Link. I think it's still very possible that this love was platonic, but odds are it was more than that. There's still many more details to discuss for Zelda, but I think we should establish Mipha's relationship with Link in Age of Calamity so we can take them both into context for my final points. Of course, since Link and Mipha had known each other since Link was a small child, they still have a close bond in Age of Calamity, but Link's visit to Zora's Domain referenced in her diary goes completely different. In Age of Calamity, he travels there with Zelda and Impa to recruit the champions. Instead of staying with Zelda to talk to King Dorephin, he separates from the group to spend some alone time with Mipha. Well, I guess they are third-wheeled by Terrako, but that doesn't really matter. Here the difference between their meetings goes totally different, and we can tell through Mipha's dialogue.
Well, Link, you've grown since I last saw you. And yet, you have not changed.
We can tell since she says he's grown since the last time she saw him that this is intended to replace the visit from Mipha's diary in Breath of the Wild. All of Link's childhood and time growing up where he had visited Zora's Domain remained unaffected by time travel up to this point. The fact that Mipha also says that he has not changed also reestablishes the point that Link never made the transformation into the stoic knight he became in Breath of the Wild. Let's recall another section in Mipha's diary. Mipha wrote that when she asked Link what was wrong, he merely shrugged, making Mipha feel as if Link was looking past her. Since this is no longer the case, Link's and Mipha's relationship is far more stable, and this detail alone will make a Me-Link ship a lot more likely in Age of Calamity. Although Link's and Mipha's relationship doesn't develop any distance like it did in Breath of the Wild, Mipha still has the desire to fight alongside Link to protect him. She no longer seems to worry about his mental stress since Link seems to be in better control, but she evidently feels as if she needs protection from physical harm. If Mipha is defeated in gameplay, she will occasionally mutter,
I promised to protect him,
which is referring to Link. Mipha also seems to take the chance to walk beside Link whenever that rare opportunity arises. Though since he is assigned to accompany Zelda, she can't do this often since he's required to be by Zelda's side most of the time. One moment though that stuck out to me was when the group was traveling through the Lost Woods. Instead of Zelda leading the group, she is towards the back, while Link, Mipha, and Revali are in front. Since Link and Revali are rivals, Link is probably doing his duty to lead the group, but Revali just won't have it, so he's just breathing down Link's neck the entire time and complaining about how they're going in circles. We see Mipha standing between the two, using her rare opportunity to be beside Link and stand between him and Revali if a fight were to break out between them again, once again presenting Mipha's will to protect Link. In this game, Mipha is also a bit more open about her feelings towards Link. Her most clear indications that she loved Link romantically were told through other means, such as her diary or by Sidon telling Link that she had crafted the armor for him, but didn't get the chance to propose. In Chapter 2, during the cutscene Assassination, Daruk and Mipha are walking behind Link, Zelda, and the group of knights. Part of their conversation goes as follows.
Daruk, I have a request. Might I join you for training next time? I would like to be fully prepared. Learning new ways to fight foes might do me some good.
Of course! The more the merrier! Thing is, we still need a knight gritty enough to seal the darkness, and they're nowhere to be found.
Yes.
Although, hey, if you see anybody that...
If you look closely, Mipha was staring ahead at Link. Daruk picked up on this, which is why he cut himself off and chuckled. Right after this happens, they are interrupted by the Yiga attack, but if we look at their faces right before, we see Daruk giving Mipha a smug look, while Mipha has a sheepish, slightly embarrassed look on her face. Here I think Daruk chuckles not just because you can tell Mipha has confidence Link will be the knight that wields the legendary sword, but also picks up on her crush on him. Mipha's sheepish smile, boy that's a tongue twister, is more of a hint that she is admitting her affections for Link to Daruk. I think this was a rather clever way of the developers to hint that Link will soon obtain the Master Sword, while also simultaneously developing the love story with Mipha. In the conclusion to the next chapter, we once again see Mipha and Daruk speaking with each other, where Link becomes the subject of discussion. In that cutscene following the inauguration ceremony, Mipha thanks Daruk for agreeing to help her train. Well, let's just play the tape.
So, Daruk, about what we discussed.
So you're ready to begin your training. Let's get to it.
Thank you. I hope to become stronger, so that I can fight alongside... Oh, no! I was just,
Enough!
As Link overhears Mipha saying this while looking at him, she becomes flustered and tries to explain herself to Link, who starts to walk over to her. Although Link's facial expression does not make a significant change when he starts to walk towards Mipha, that doesn't mean he doesn't have any emotional connection to what Mipha was saying. We may never get a definitive insight to Link's emotions at this moment, but I interpreted this as if he wants to walk off with her and have a personal conversation. But like I said, we'll never know for sure. Nevertheless, Link seems to be much more attentive to Mipha in Age of Calamity than he was in Breath of the Wild for the reasons we discussed. Before we wrap up, there's a couple more details I would like to analyze using the context I've just established. Back in the Lost Woods, when Zelda notices Hestu and stops the group, Link runs back to Zelda and stands in front of her in a defensive position, ready to defend Zelda if needed. When Hestu begins to lead the way, Link is once again the first one to lead the group, and Mipha, who was previously right beside Link, stays back with Zelda. Link's two major love interests turn towards each other, give one another a half smile, and both sound like they're trying to tell each other something, but neither could speak something comprehensible. Remember, this event occurs after Link had already saved Zelda a couple of times, including the attack from Suga, and Zelda had already shown a couple of potential signs of affection towards Link. Though Zelda's love is probably still developing, Zelda and Mipha are probably both aware they are competing for Link, but they're too polite to act hostile towards each other. It's worth noting that in the cutscenes, Link smiles more with Zelda than he does Mipha. After they escape from the monsters at the Spring of Courage, Impa yells words of encouragement at Zelda. Zelda looks down at Teriko, then to Link, who gives her a faint smile and a nod. Also after defeating Calamity Ganon, Link gives her a smile, but of course, this could just be him smiling at the entire group since they did after all just seal the world's greatest evil. In my opinion, the most significant time Link smiles in the game is at the very end when the four descendants of the champions are about to return to the Breath of the Wild timeline. As Sidon is giving his farewell to his sister, who he will never see again, they have an emotional moment and Link and Zelda are shown watching, both of them smiling. As Zelda steps forward to address the group, Link remains standing there looking directly at Mipha and Sidon. Zelda does step into the line between Link and Mipha, so it's possible Link was just watching Zelda as she was about to give her short speech, but he was already looking in Mipha's direction before Zelda stepped between them. Overall, Age of Calamity doesn't have enough content to determine who holds Link's romantic affection. There are a few hints for both Zelda and Mipha as we discussed, but nothing has been particularly strong, and both I'd say are about even so far. However, when Link arrives to help Mipha and Sidon defeat Waterblight Ganon and the gameplay starts, there's a text box that appears where Mipha says, "Link, I knew you would come." At first this may seem insignificant, but we need to quickly understand why Mipha would have this kind of faith in Link. We have spent plenty of time discussing how Mipha in both Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity tries to protect Link, but we have never seen Link make equivalent sacrifices for Mipha. However, this does not mean that Link never came through for her. In fact, we can logically reason that since Mipha has such high faith in him, Link has often been there for her when she needs it. If this wasn't the case, she probably would have said something like, "I was hoping you would come," rather than, "I knew you would come." This may be a bit too picky, but I think it fits what we know about the characters pretty well. Before the Avengers Endgame scene that takes place on Hyrule Field, there's also a quick shot of a blooming Silent Princess flower with a castle in the background. When we see close-up shots of the Silent Princess flowers in Breath of the Wild, they supplemented each other to create symbolism of endless love, hinting at the Z-Link ship. But when it's shown here in Age of Calamity, the context is totally different. We don't have an emotional moment occurring between Link and Zelda, or any characters as a matter of fact. Zelda has recently unlocked her sacred power, and they were about to fight their way to the castle to vanquish the Calamity. Trying to interpret the Silent Princess shown in this context as a symbol of love doesn't seem to quite match up. Instead, I think it better fits its alternative symbolism of representing Zelda's character growth. Since Zelda had just unlocked her power, this would make sense. I know this is kind of a letdown for Z-Link compared to the very complex symbolism in Breath of the Wild, but I genuinely think in this context it isn't a symbol of love. If you'd like to disagree with me on this, feel free to let me know in the comments below. So who ultimately is the better match for Link in Age of Calamity? Zelda or Mipha? Well, based on all the information we've covered in this long video, I'd still have to say, I don't know. I mean that too. Though the developers appear to be hinting at Z-Link for Age of Calamity, the evidence in this game is far weaker than it is for Breath of the Wild. Link and Zelda never had the tension in their relationship which led them to share each other's insecurities with each other. In Age of Calamity, they just seemed to be aware of each other's progress and were friends, though there's a pretty good chance that their relationships were just platonic. The only reason I think the odds are slightly in Zelda's favor is since the game once again ends with Link standing side by side with Zelda overlooking Hyrule, just like they did in Breath of the Wild. But other than that, Mipha has a pretty balanced chance. Link never hid his emotions, and based on what happened after the inauguration ceremony, he seems like he still talks with her fairly regularly. In Age of Calamity's timeline, nothing as far as we're aware would have gotten in the way of Mipha making the Zora armor as a proposal for Link. And with Z-Link in this game seemingly being more platonic by the end, I think Mipha has just as good of a shot. Like I said, I think the ball here could roll either way, but I know calling it a tie is boring, so I'll make my decision. Even though the developers seem to have intended for another Z-Link, I'm going to have to pick Mipha for Age of Calamity. With Mipha and all the champions surviving the Calamity, and Link's and Mipha's unharmed relationship, I think that Mipha will definitely go through with her proposal and Link will likely accept. So there we have it. Z-Link turned out to be the victor for Breath of the Wild, while Mipha won my personal tiebreaker for Age of Calamity. I know I definitely had some bias influencing my decision here at the end of my analysis, but I hope I did a good job proving to you that Link could genuinely go either way if Nintendo decided to make a DLC with more story for the game. Odds are that won't happen, but we can dream. Do you agree with my conclusions for these two games? If not, let me know who you think Link would end up with in each game, and why. If you enjoyed this video, which I hope you did since it's been highly requested for a few months now, please remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you know when the future parts of this series are released. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to have you here next time.